Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be showing some gameplay and doing some commentary along with Pulverize. I'm running the latest version, or the updated version of Pulverize, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description. You don't need to have seen that video in order to benefit from this one. So I'm going to go ahead and open a sigil here, and I'm actually going to choose this one here. I like the affixes on this, and that's the first thing you're going to notice about Pulverize, is there's definitely some that I wouldn't run. For example, this is a tier 100 with Lightning Storm. I never run this. The reason for that is I want to be mobile with Pulverize, often positioning myself so that the enemies are kind of funneling or converging so that I can use less pulverizes to clear the screen, and thus save spirit. And the other factor is if I stop moving a lot of times, I'll just die. So Lightning Storm and having to get inside of the dome is just a bad choice. So that's one I would probably just scrap. This particular one is a good option, and it's tier 98, so it should be pretty comparable to the 100. And first thing I'm going to do here is basically just kind of meander through. This is not a super fast moving build, but it's not slow in terms of clear speed because it kills everything so quickly. So you may be a little bit slower to get to the mobs, but it will clear everything fast. So overall, your actual run speed isn't terrible. Now I need to get on the damage reduction mob and back, and I'm just kind of positioning myself or trying to separate whatever I can. If I can't get on the damage reduction, I can just drag them away or maybe even chip them away. This build does so much damage that you can actually kill them through that buff, so keep that in mind, but it's definitely not the recommended way to go about things. I would recommend just kind of picking off the damage reduction mob and then moving forward. And you'll see there that if I don't get an overpower or even a crit, you can take a couple of hits. And another thing with this build that a lot of people think about is that you could obviously handpick footage. So like if you're showing off an overpower build, you could easily handpick footage that has the biggest crits or one-shots the boss and so forth. So by showing all the gameplay and talking our way through it, you can kind of realize or see that the build is in fact capable of clearing it all. And two, the biggest frequently asked question that I get about this build or even the previous iteration is how does it survive, right? We have relatively low armor. In fact, we're sitting at, that's in humanoid form, 85% reduction in werebear form, but we still survive, right? In fact, we survive pretty well. We do occasionally die if we get caught out of position or aren't expecting something, or there's a ballista or something that hits us in a couple of the levels that will take you out in one hit with that armor. But these are kind of normal dangers, and nothing is immune to all damage, right? But the way we really survive with this build is just by clearing things so effectively. And again, just dragging myself back, I'm trying to dodge that archer in the back there. But we do so much damage in such a wide area across the screen, that's basically what keeps us alive, is we just kill things before they get to us. And here we have another pack with a damage resist mob and pulling everything in with the Godslayer's Crown. Another wonderful tactic with this build, and another thing you can do before bosses, is just slow down and take a breath for a minute. You're so reliant on your overpower being up that the faster you go, you're actually hurting yourself and really hurting your damage output. The slower you go in letting these overpower cooldowns come back up, it really goes a long way for more damage and thus increasing your survivability. Now, I do not run movement speed in my particular version of the build. There are some versions of Pulverize that do, so keep that in mind, because the faster you move and the faster you get to mobs, you might get there and not be able to do anything. Whereas I put a strong emphasis on the gameplay of positioning myself in such a way that I'm capable of using fewer pulverizes in order to clear the screen. And I gotta be careful here about using my hands to talk. I might die taking my hand off of the controller. However, you'll see so far no difficulty, but I'm not blitzing around the screen like, say, a Stormclaw build or even a Were-NATO type build. So I'm going to come back into the hallway here, drag all of that towards me as much as possible, and just nuke them with, I believe, 3 pulverizes there. And that's going to save a lot of spirit for the future packs that I'm coming up to. Can also take advantage of the Metamorphosis. Vampiric Power, incredibly strong. I absolutely love it on this particular build. It just gives you extra forms of Unstoppable, which we have a lot of benefit from. Using my debilitating roar there to slow everything and just reposition myself. And again, just more bang for my buck, basically. Want to get on the Quartermaster here. Dodge out of the attack. And you just get so many of these evades, especially if you're running a pair of boots that has extra charges. And I do run that in my particular build. In fact, I'll show my boots. I use Aspect of Quicksand, not mandatory. You can kind of swap this up to a few different things. But I run the plus all stats and triple resist. I've really stressed this in multiple videos, and I just want to point it out quickly as well. By running the all stats, that actually allows the later Paragon boards to be active. And as I go further down in these Paragon boards, you'll see I'm just meeting the dexterity requirement by 10, just meeting the intelligence requirement by 2. So I need that plus all stats in order to do this. The second thing is by having this triple resist, it allows you to get all of your resistances capped at 70%. And I just find that so important. But the trade-off there is I don't have movement speed on my boots, and that's why I'm moving around slower than some of the other versions that you may have seen. So we've got the captain here, and similar tactic. I'm going to get away by breaking that and just move back, and essentially positioning myself in such a way. There's my other Grizzly Rage cooldown here. And keep in mind that Grizzly Rage, even though it's your ultimate here, it's up a fair amount of the times. And you can actually be pretty liberal with its use, so take advantage of that. You don't have to reserve it for only the toughest or most difficult elites and so forth. In fact, it just tremendously helps you. A lot of armor, a lot of additional damage. Now, let's go ahead into the second section here. And we will go in and defeat the Seahag, which is, in my opinion, one of the more difficult bosses, because we're going to have to dodge the effects on the ground as they come out. All while kind of making sure that we have enough spirit, generating some. So I'm waiting for Overpower. That's why I'm kind of running around. I don't have much spirit, but there's no sense in using my spirit if I don't have an Overpower up. I'm not going to do enough damage to that boss. And I do go down because I'm too slow to actually use my evade. I like to blame that on the fact that I'm talking while playing, but in the reality is nobody's perfect. So you can die, and that's a fact. And a lot of people have been saying, you know, how does this build survive? We'll go back in and try this again, and hopefully we get a clear here. I should have all the Overpower critical hits up, so this boss is probably going to take more damage off the get-go at this point. I've also got Grizzly Rage, so I'll pop Grizzly Rage off the bat and hopefully just get some big hits. Get basically a big nothing on the opener. Manage 25% of the boss's life. Be a little more careful with these puddles. Some more puddles. I don't seem to have any Overpower, so I'm just going to kind of back up, and you'll see that Overpower did in fact come up there. Got a big hit. And again, I'm just backing out for Overpower here. And at this point, I should be able to kill the boss without any more difficulty. I just need to get one more hit off, and that'll do it. So taking a little bit of time, in my opinion, for these builds, that is one of the more difficult bosses. And as you see, I could obviously die as I did going into the first attempt there. So I hope that this really kind of clears up some things and shows you how the gameplay goes and ways that you can manage yourself, get through the higher tiers. I still, at this point, think that playing Overpower builds, if you're farming, you know, experience for glyphs and so forth, I would still recommend farming in areas that you can one-shot everything. So if that's tier 70, do tier 70s. The reason is this build gets better the faster it clears mobs. And again, that's just because one Overpower Pulverize clears everything leading up to the boss. I hope this clears up some of the questions that I keep getting a lot in terms of how do you survive, or how do you manage your spirit, and how do you have enough spirit to keep pulverizing. Another thing is use Elixirs, okay? I didn't have any active in that run myself. In fact, none of the videos I've shown this season have had any, and that's just because I want to prove that the builds work without them and they're not reliant on them. But by all means, use them, okay? There's some great ones. Iron Skin Elixir, increase your armor. You can get Crushing Elixir to increase overpower damage. Critical Strike chance, Critical Strike damage. All these are going to benefit your character. If you're not capped on resistances, you can choose one of those. So take advantage of these, right? That's part of the game. So use them and clear dungeons that you haven't done so far, whether it be the first time or just use them for farming to get more consistent clears, quicker runs, and get your character progress faster and quicker. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.